Have you ever woke up in the middle of a dream and the dream was so interesting that you wanted to go back to sleep to see the end of it? If so, what was the dream? I had a nightmare a couple years back, and I still remember some bits. I was in a city where there was an outbreak of a disease. Infected people would start leaking black stuff from their eyes and noses and attack non-infected people. For some reason, I was walking in a part of the city that was completely deserted a couple days after the outbreak. Very faintly I heard someone crying. I approached and found out that it came from a backyard. If I wanted to see who it was, I had to climb a high fence. When I walked into the backyard I was fucking horrified. There was a crying little kid, like 3 years old on a leash, tied to a pole. I didn't dare to approach, because that child was leaking Valk stuff from the nose. I woke up after this, and was still horrified. The parents had to leave their child who was still alive, chained to a pole outside. That fucked me up for a couple of days. I dreamt that I was part of some Eastern European resistance movement who had to speak in code and hide out in abandoned manors in the forest to plan our attacks against some fascist regime. We enlisted the Pope to help us, but when we went to meet him he has double-crossed us because the regime we were fighting somehow knew the Pope was gay and was going to tell everyone. I woke up then, not knowing if my resistance group was executed, or if we escaped somehow. I call it my gay Pope dream. Was exploring a jungle with a group of, I assume, friends. We ended up discovering some kind of temple, but it was dark so we decided to set up camp. I was charged with gathering dry wood and leaves for the fire. While macheting my way through vines, I heard my name being screamed by one of the group members in a terrified way, repeatedly. Woke up to see my mom yelling my name and to get the fuck up already. I never found out what that temple was. Edit. I have never watched any adventure movies like Indiana Jones or Jumanji, nor have I played any Uncharted game. I once dreamt that all of my family and closest friends were on the world's largest cruise ship. Along the way, we somehow were exposed to radioactive waste that gave us all superpowers or other mutations. I remember so vividly being able to use my mind to move objects with ease, and I threw donuts at my brother, whose skin had turned as hard as stone. This one girl on the cruise that we all universally hated, for reasons I can't remember, received a really random and useless mutation. She grew a really fat lizard tail, like a leopard gecko who has eaten a lot lol. She was crying about how ugly she was now and all we could do was laugh. Then I woke up. A long time ago, I had a dream that there were ghosts living in my family's garage. Nowhere else, just the garage. I somehow became friends with one, but she was unable to speak to me, leave the property that the house was on, and wasn't able to show any facial expressions that wouldn't be considered terrifying. Me and my ghost friend were playing on the house porch and two guys were trying to break into the house. She tried to stop them by scaring the living heck out of them by making a terrifying face and screaming the most blood-curdling scream ever right in their faces. I wasn't able to see the face she made, but I somehow knew it was there, and all I could hear was the scream. The people trying to rob the house ran off, but instead of celebrating, I curled up and started crying because of how terrifying the scream was. I absolutely loved that ghost, and I forgot that her whole purpose was to scare people, but she did it to protect me and the house. I still cried though, and she tried to cheer me up the best way she could. Then I woke up. I knew that was a dream, but I didn't want to leave my ghost friend alone knowing the last time she saw me was when she scared me to tears by accident. I tried to go back to sleep, and I did, and I somehow successfully re-entered the dream, only it was several years in the future. The garage still had a couple of ghosts in it, but not nearly as much, and the rest seemed to be oblivious to humans. I was going into the attic and found some pictures in there of me around the age I was friends with the ghost, and on a picture I saw a very faint image of her face standing next me. I went down the attic and woke up. I didn't get to tell the ghost that I forgive her or anything, and I still feel some sort of emotional attachment to her. It was probably the best nightmare I've ever had, and one of the dreams I've wanted to go back to the most, just so I can tell her that there are no hard feelings. I have a story about when the opposite of this happened. It was a fucking epic fantasy dream, let me tell ya. Evil wizard of some sort that I'm pretty sure was my 8th grade math teacher, kidnapped princess, A worthless but snappy sidekick that was my best friend Irol. This dream had everything. So I beat the bad guy, rescued the princess and brought her back to a village of, I think Ewoks or something, I dunno. Big celebration, everybody went to hooray and stuff and then it didn't end. We just kinda stood there looking at each other. It felt like a long time. Ewoks just kinda start milling around and doing their everyday shit. Made some small talk with the princess. And then eventually the dream ended and I woke up. It was a strange one. I had a nightmare about being a teenage girl with a group of friends on bikes hiding from and hunting down a shadow monster that killed dogs, and we tracked it down to some abandoned house and tried to rescue the dogs, but one of the dogs started barking and I had to try and calm it down before the monster came and got us, and my friends screamed from another room but the do. Then I woke up and I will never know if those dogs survived. Oh boy, here we fucking go. I had this dream which I still remember vividly, even if I was 9-10 at the time. So, I was walking down the street and met my primary school teacher, a cute old lady with the driest humor ever. We talked for a bit and she invited me over to talk and drink some tea. I enter her house. She makes the tea and we sit in this area with 3 walls made out of bookcases. In between there were these 2 somewhat fancy chairs and a round low coffee table. We talked for a bit and she starts telling me how she brought me here for a good reason, and she just does some magic or presses a damn button or whatever and a wall opens exactly like in Dexter's laboratory. She invites me in, and I see all these people doing a variety of stuff. People being tied to metal hospital tables, in tubes, whatever. Everything had this technology kind of blue, and I walked through this huge mall-like revolving door. I realized I fell asleep a bit after walking, so it must have had some kind of sedative or something. Anyway, I wake up, and in my fear I am tied to a metal table, without any skin. I can see my muscles, all of them, move, twitch and contract all while I am fighting to break loose from the table. That teacher comes by and says to me in the lines of "Don't worry, it's all part of the procedure." I see other people around me, exactly in the same state. She releases me after a bit. She gives me this spandex dark blue suit and told me to wear it. After I put it on I could move like somewhat of a superhero. I could run really fast. I could jump really high. I was very agile and nimble. She told me I am some sort of recruit and that she has a mission for me. After that I just remember teleporting to someplace by my home, with the gal that I knew by me as my duo, with the task to catch this black invisible morphing dog. I remember aiming at that thing with something, like this bulky black blaster, after which, I woke up. You can tell that my young me was very pissed for not being able to be a superhero. I had a dream that I had a bunch of birds and snakes just living in my kitchen. They were my pets, and I was cuddling my snakes on the couch, watching Netflix while my birds were chilling out, flying on top of my fridge and stuff. It was a great dream, and it was so vivid that when I was waking up, I thought, crap, I left my snakes on the couch out with the birds. I hope they didn't eat one of the birds. Double quote. I was disappointed when I came back to my senses and there were no animals in my home, but relieved that I wasn't such a negligent pet owner that my imaginary snakes ate my imaginary birds. My situation was a bit different. I was once having a pretty vivid nightmare about a zombie apocalypse. In the dream, I was running from a horde and I ducked into a random house. Time then passed, in the dream, and I put my head down to rest while I listened to growls coming from outside. At that exact second I woke up. I was relieved that it was just a dream because it seemed so real. However, about 10 minutes later I fell back to sleep and the dream actually resumed. I remember thinking, oh my god, this isn't a dream within the dream. The rest was even more vivid and terrifying because I was convinced it was real. That was a pretty tough night, but it was interesting how my dream managed to resume itself, and it did it in such a way that I was convinced the incident was actually happening. My small 10-minute wake-up period seemed like the dream. This is also the opposite, but one time I had a dream that I was in my hometown airport, a pretty big one, when suddenly a shooting started happening down the terminal. I used to work at an airport, so I found the nearest worker and had them open the nearest door out onto the tarmac. We started evacuating people as the shooting came closer. Somehow I was the last person to go through the door. When I reached the tarmac, there wasn't a single person in sight. Even the noises from inside the airport had stopped. Up above me the clouds were blacker than night, and purple lightning was striking frequently. As I walked out into the middle of the tarmac staring into the heavens, airplanes started crashing down all around me very cinematically. Honestly, the sight took my breath away, and not in a good way. It was very dreadful and dramatic. I can still see it in my head if I focus. I woke up just as a 737 crashed right on top of me. I have a pretty crazy imagination. The end of the world on a beach. I was getting ice cream for my family when suddenly the sun went purple, started spinning and fell behind the horizon. All the sky followed, replaced by darkness. Gravity broke, we went down and couldn't move anymore. All the world around us started to flatten inexorably, slowly drifting towards the dark rift at the end. A voice started to call different names and people got sucked into the night. Suddenly it was my turn. I glided to the edge freaking out, and as I fell over the horizon, I realized I didn't have a body anymore. I was just a gaze traveling in space. It lasted a very long time. We passed all the beautiful planets and slowly left the solar system. Then we traveled across the galaxy and left it too. Somewhere far ahead, in the total darkness, faint lights started to appear. Stars and constellations I never saw before. I knew at this moment that they were waiting for us, and even if it takes forever, we will reach them. And once we do, all our questions will be answered. Finally we'll know what's out there and why we exist. We were getting closer and closer. Almost there. I could feel it won't be so long. And then my brain chose to wake up. I desperately thought no, not now, just a moment more. But it was too late, the dream was gone. I was so pissed. Sometimes I think my own brain laughs at me. I had this dream where I was some sort of undercover agent working for a secret agency. I did tens of assassinations of higher level target. I received a task where I have to kill some low level target inside an office. I was suspicious, and as a precaution I took extra explosive and ammo. I sneaked into the building at night, cautiously proceed to the room where the target is working. Through the glass door I could see him working on his PC. I used a silenced pistol to eliminate him. After the assassination I was curious why I was sent to kill a low-level target, so I was snooping around in his computer and stumbled upon some rather interesting classified files which were linking the president of the country doing something which could destroy the whole country. Little did I know they were monitoring the PC, and I was caught reading those files. There were backup agents set to kill the target if I am not able to. They were ordered to terminate me immediately. Before I could process the information I started getting attacked by the other agents. 3 agents entered the room and I was behind the desk, so I removed the pin from a grenade and wall banged them. Now starts my quest to stop the president. Entering a heavily armed base to kill the president. The action scenes are beyond explanation. I reached the president's room, I threw a grenade in the room. Somehow he managed to escape it and went outside the base. I followed him and people were running away from something, and there was ash falling from the sky. A volcano was erupting and lava was flowing towards me. I see the president on a base on the volcano protected by some shield. I was jumping over the rocks being carried by lava to reach the president, and then I woke up. I tried going back to sleep to see if I killed the president or not, but was not able to. That was around 10 years back.